Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi, good morning. It's chilly. 2 days ago, I woke up at 60 degrees, working its way to 70 degrees through the day. Today, I woke up late and it was 27 degrees. I'll never understand the climate, certainly as it relates to the southern United States. Anyway, I'm glad I'm not in Quebec. I don't think I could handle that. It's beautiful, but I don't think I could actually operate in that snow. I'd just become a recluse. All right. Nichiren's great aim was to achieve his ideal of the correct practice of Shakyamuni's teachings of the Lotus Sutra, using, of course, his modern insights and doctrine, and to establish that as the correct practice for our age, yeah? And of course, he was trying to establish it within his own country. Believing that he was himself the man to do it, and that the true import and end of Buddhism had not been apprehended in earlier times, even in India, which he wasn't putting India down so much as he was identifying these different epochs that Shakyamuni had defined and taking, again, embodying those truths for this epoch, this time. Even in India, he saw in vision a return of Buddhism from Japan to India and its propagation thence throughout the world. He himself was always the cardinal factor in this new era, but the time and place were essential conditions of the realization of this universal Buddhism. Right? Thus he writes, that India was called the country of the moon tribe was prophetic of the appearance of Buddha in that country. Our Fuso, which if you don't know, I believe that's a tree. Let's see if he says it here. Yeah, the name of a certain tree called Fuso was sometimes employed by the Chinese as an appellation for Japan. Our Fuso is called Japan the land of sunrise. Must it not be the country where the predestined sage should appear? Doesn't that validate everything that I've been saying? The transit of the moon shifts from west to east. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. This is an omen that the Buddhist religion shall return from the land of the sunrise to the country of the moon tribe. Interesting observation, yeah? The moon is not bright at all the time. The moon is not bright all the time, and just so Buddha proclaimed the perfect truth only during the 8 years of his life. The sun surpasses the moon in brilliance, and in like manner the light of the Eastern sage is destined to illuminate the dark ages after the 500 years. Big statement. The author continues, while Nichiren's thought was soaring on such visions of the coming practice of true Buddhism, the Mongol menace also engaged his mind. The, quote, warning to the god Hachiman, remember we read about that a few chapters ago, was indeed meant to be an emphatic monition. Now not to the prejudiced people, but to the god, the deity who was believed to be the guardian of the country, Hachiman, yeah? And an embodiment of the nation's militant views or virtues. Indeed, while the warning was in hand, the Mongols were busily engaged in preparations for sending their invincible armada as the last attempt upon the island nation. When in the year following, 1281, the prophet committed to writing the, quote, Three Great Mysteries, or the Three Great Secret Laws, or known by other titles, as his teaching legacy, the Armada had already left the shores of China and were swarming along the Korean coasts. 1 month later, in the 5th month, in June, 4,000 warships appeared on Japanese waters and came to anchor in the Bay of Hakata in western Japan. The excitement was great, and undoubtedly the news reached the Bodhisattva's hermitage, right? Nichiren's home at Manobu. The circular sent by him to his followers is very characteristic. So upon hearing the news, Nichiren sent out word to be shared amongst all of his followers. Quote, now the little Mongols have come to attack Great Japan. All my disciples and followers should keep silence and not discuss the matter either with others or among themselves. Anyone who violates this command shall be excommunicated. Let this be made known to all. Wow. Rather authoritarian himself, wasn't he? But that was medieval Japan. Basically, though, Nichiren was saying this out of compassion. He was saying, look, Japan has been egregiously violating the truths of the teaching of Shakyamuni, and has brought with it, through its own disarray, its own internal battles, its own unfilial practices, it brought this attack on itself. Now, you know better because I've shown you what's actually happening in light of the teaching. Don't you be the one to stand up to the Mongols like you have something to teach them. Don't you be the one attacking Japanese forces that are trying to repel the Mongols if you'd only listen to Nietzsche. Keep your mouth shut. Let this play out, lest you risk your own life. This is what Nichiren is saying. Your life right now is super tenuous. If you don't create a wave, you will not be noticed. But if you open your mouth, you're inviting disaster. So keep quiet about this. Don't even talk amongst each other. This is the time to be unheard, unnoticed. This is the best course of action for you not to be affected by this negative karma. I don't know why I just thought of Karate Kid. What was the teacher's name? Mr. Anagi? He said best way to not win a fight, or best way to not lose. Something about fighting. He said the best way to avoid or not lose or not win was to no be there, right? That's basically what Nichiren is telling all of his followers. Just, right? The circular is dated the 16th of the 6th month, July 3rd, 1281, when the defenders of the western coasts were struggling against the arrows and bombs of the Mongols. The expression is so terse that it can be taken in more than one way, especially when we remember that Nichiren had always seemed to hail the Mongols as an instrument to awaken the nation. But one thing is clear. In the letter, he used for the first time the phrase, the little Mongols, the opposite of the usual designation, the great Mongols. The Mongols, physically great and formidable, were little from the Bodhisattva's point of view, while, as is evident from his previous writings, the actual Japan was for him a degenerate nation, doomed to ruin, but the ideal Japan was great and impregnable. So this is simply a recognition by the author of Nichiren's valuation of his followers and human life. But as I've said before, as a parent, sometimes your child's behavior or your sister's behavior or your brother's behavior or your employee's behavior is going to bite them in the ass. And if they're not willing to listen to you, you need to stand back and let them come to their own realization, and certainly be there to take care of them afterward. But sometimes the teaching simply has to happen in the individual. Teaching through the ears has its limitations, but teaching in the mind, that is indelible. And that's a truth of Buddhism since Shakyamuni, right? This is why I can't give you Buddhahood, or you can't trade Buddhahood with somebody else. Buddhahood, Buddha-ness happens in the individual, and it is a self-manifesting effort, right? It was on the first of the intercalary 7th month, August 15th of 1281, that a storm destroyed the Mongol armada. That's significant. Which had not effected a landing, and thus the invasion proved a total failure. Embarrassing for the Mongols, and undoubtedly an auspicious sign to all of those warriors who were trying to keep them from invading their country. That this great storm occurred before the armada could land on Japan must have seemed, right, very, very auspicious indeed. On the very day when the Mongol warships were being shattered by the hurricane, Nichiren wrote to a warrior disciple who was probably setting out to join the defenders, saying, "When the Mongols sent their ultimatum, coming on top of the previous calamities of earthquakes, etc., I gave warning to the authorities, but they did not give heed. Now Nichiren's predictions are being fulfilled, and the battle is raging. All the people of the country will certainly become, in this present life, asuras, furious spirits, driven by anger, and fall hereafter into the nethermost hells. You may die in the battle, yet be sure that we shall meet in the paradise of Ultra Peak. Even if you should share in the calamity, your heart and mind is in communion with the Buddha's heart and mind. In this life, you are participating in the life of the furious spirits, the asuras, and yet you will surely be born in the Buddha's land." So this is that he's mimicking that assurance that Shakyamuni gave in the Lotus Sutra, that even those who behave or are forced to behave under duress, a samurai, that's their life, right? And yet, should you keep your mind, your sentient mind, clear on the goal of Buddhahood, you will attain it, even if it is at the end of your life. I'd like to experience it now, thank you very much, but all other letters written during a few months after the great event are full of this sentiment. The Bodhisattva Nichiren, the prophet he keeps calling him, seems not to attach much importance to the great victory won by the help of a storm, which was believed by the people to have been sent by divine intervention. There you are. Hachiman caused the storm. Yay, because we were good fighters. No. That's what they want to believe, right? In one of these letters, he says, quote, "An autumn gale destroyed the enemy's ships, and now the people boast of a great success, as if the commander of the enemy had been captured, while the priests or the monks pretend that it was due to the efficacy of their mysteries and hand positions and incantations. Ask them whether they took the head of the Mongol king. Whatever they may say, make no other reply than this." So, again, he's instructing temperance. But if you're confronted about it with the boastful yearnings of these people, we called the gods and they won the war. Well, the order of the day, remember, shogunate, samurai, dictatorial, death, their enemies, even if it was a peasant, meant taking their head off. Yeah, I win. Okay, so where's the Mongol commander's head? You can't profess a win if you don't have a head. It's kind of disgusting, but that was the order of the day. And that might sober a jubilant warrior, yeah? In reality, the defeat of the invaders was of momentous consequence. Most of the soldiers were drowned, though the story that only 3 men escaped must be an exaggeration. The people rejoiced, and the leading elites of the religions of the day glorified their achievements in prayer. But Nichiren looked at the event with a cool aloofness, probably thinking how remote the fulfillment of his ideal was. He still insisted that the nation could not really be saved except by complete conversion. Right? You got a really good scare there. Maybe learn from it? No. They just entrenched themselves deeper into their magical, mystical world. Nichiren may have been mistaken if he thought that the success of an invasion by the Mongols would prove the truth of his predictions, but he was certainly right in not being elated by the victory. He was far-sighted enough to recognize that the curse that rested on the nation, or curse that was self-fulfilled, enough to recognize that the curse rested on the nation was a long way from being removed by the defeat of the Mongols. Historians know today that the evils of the superstitious mysteries against which Nichiren fulminated increased in consequence of the unexpected end of the Mongol armada. Yeah, they all felt justified, because the authorities were themselves too superstitious to resist the exorbitant demands made by the Shinto and Buddhist priests and sorcerers for the further contributions toward the support of mysteries and supplications on which much wealth was lavished. It must have made Nichiren have many sleepless nights gritting his teeth, right? How could they turn that lesson into justification for their horrible behavior? These priests were prized more highly for their prayers than the fighters who had prevented the Mongols from landing in the first place and kept them for 3 months on the sea until the storm came. Measures for defense against future attacks were concerted, but unwisely from the strategic point of view. These measures were confined to the land, little attention paid to the navy. Yet a worse thing was the extravagant outlay in building and decorating the temples and shrines of those deities who were believed to have rescued the country. Oh, it's so fun to believe. Let's have a party. Let's invite all the deities. They didn't learn anything. The expenditure on them being estimated to have much more than for any other purpose. Discontent was growing among the warriors. Financial difficulties became more and more serious, and the final result was the collapse of the Hojo government in 1333, which was followed by social disintegration. Of course, Nichiren didn't live to see this. The defense was successful only by chance. Subsequent events proved that miraculous relief was largely responsible for the age of war, which lasted 300 years after the fall of the Hojos. So, those who had studied with Nichiren and heard his balance sheet, his equation of what had to happen if this behavior continued, well, they saw it come to fruition. Their children saw it to come to fruition, right? Their grandchildren. Whatever might have been the effect of the victory on Nichiren's mind, it is interesting to notice that one of his letters written not long after the event, dated the 11th day of the 9th month, October 22nd, takes a high flight and may be regarded as the crowning expression of his ideas about himself and the transfiguration of the world. Quote, "This spot among the mountains is secluded from the worldly life, and there is no human habitation in the neighborhood." He's speaking of Mount Minobu, where he was retired. It wasn't a bustling city. It wasn't a bunch of people moving around. It was very secluded. And being in the mountains, rather protected from the activities going on outside on mainland, although he's on the mainland, but you understand, isolated. East, west, north, or south, there's mountain ranges. "I am now living in such a lonely hermitage, but in my bosom, in Nichiren's fleshy body, is secretly deposited the great mystery which the Lord Shakyamuni revealed on Vulture Peak and has entrusted to me. I know the truth. I may be lonely, but I know the truth. And I share with you, right? Therefore, I know that my breast is the place where all Buddhas are immersed in contemplation." See, no, it's very visceral. It's very earthbound. It's pragmatic. He doesn't look to the skies for all the Buddhas to come and save people. It's in here. "That they turn the wheel of the truth upon my tongue, that I speak this truth, that my throat is giving birth to them, and that they are attaining the supreme enlightenment in my mouth." This is the Bodhisattva life, communicating the truth which we ourselves experience bodily through our minds, yes? I'll pause here to make a note. That's something I thought of this morning, and I thought I'd say earlier. Some might think what we do chanting to this scroll is magical, mystical. But I would correct them immediately. And if you've ever had that thought, I've had that thought. It's been a long time, but the point is, have you ever met anyone who's never, ever seen a mirror, seen themselves? Imagine a world without reflective surfaces, without a mirror. Would we ever truly know the condition of our skin, the color of our eyes, lest we hear it from another, but ourselves experience it? We take for granted the magic of a mirror. In the physical world, we rely on mirrors, don't we? So, if you can understand it physically, why cannot we understand it mindfully, mentally, sentiently? That's all this mandala is. It's not some special magical thing. Not at all. It's a conceptual thing that we use to focus our senses, our consciousnesses, to peer into our sentient mind, a mirror. Nichiren calls it that all the time. A true mirror, because instead of stopping at the flesh and the pimples and the eye color and all that, it goes right through into the sentientness, the mind, the experience of reality, allowing it, providing for it to shift to an enlightened perception, experience of life, far more immense than this container. Is that magic? Is that mysterious? It's mind-boggling, but it's earthbound, it's pragmatic, it is real. If you don't see that, then why do you believe you have a sentient mind? Why do you believe you think at all? That mechanism provided by this apparatus of body and environment is the only thing that distinguishes us and provides for the ability of enlightenment. That's what we're doing. That's just part of the apparatus. So I'll continue to read. This place is the abode of such a man who is mysteriously realizing the lotus of truth in his life. Surely, such a place is no less dignified than the paradise of Vulture Peak. There it is again, just as we read in the Virumalakirti. The Buddha land, that land of purity, it's not anywhere else. It's right here in this flesh and blood body and earth and planet and universe. It's achieved in this physical realm, samsara, but through the mind. As the truth is noble, so is the man who embodies it. As the man is noble, so is the place where he resides. We read in the chapter on the powers of the Tathagata, right? It's not called mysterious. What is it called? The transcendent power, the super mundane powers of the Tathagata, as follows, quote, "Be it in a forest or at the foot of a tree or in a monastery, on that spot erect a stupa dedicated to the Tathagata. Be the treasure tower. For such a spot is to be regarded as the place where all Tathagatas have arrived at the supreme perfect enlightenment. On that spot, all Tathagatas have turned the wheel of the truth. On that spot, all Tathagatas have entered the great decease. Whomever comes to this place will be purged of all errors and depravities which he has accumulated from eternity, and all his evil deeds will at once be transformed into the rewards and virtues." And that takes us to chapter 11, the last stage of Nichiren's life and his death. So, we will continue, obviously, with that in the next video. But once again, repeating these themes. Buddha is not some mystical place, some other. It happens in the mind of each and every one of us. And as such, it can only be awakened by each and every one of us. It's an experience to be manifest in our day-to-day, moment-to-moment instantiation of this great engine of life that is this universe. This is Nichiren's legacy, right? For us. His making this so samsarically obvious. All the time for discussion and machinations of the mind to be able to realize this. Let's just encapsulate that in an object so that we can take our incredibly distracted attention visually, orally, physically, and just bring it into focus so that instead of focusing on eye color, hair, blah, 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 mirrors, physical mirrors, we penetrate our own mind of experience. And that penetration point, he labeled a Gohanzan. This is the door. The opening is in the mind, not this mandala. But this mandala he associates as the physical focal point to penetrate the mind, not a place, not a vision of body, of self, but of all these concepts, Vulture Peak, the sermon in the sky, the way of perceiving the experience we're actually in without all the foibles of attachments and color and shape. And that's all there. There's no denial of it. This isn't, what's the word? Not minimalist. Oh, my brain. Nihilistic. There's no destruction of anything. But Sylvain talks about that all the time. No. Listen, read carefully, and if the translation isn't saying it carefully, rely on the fact that the translation is inadequate. But we've read enough together to know that the intent isn't to destroy stuff. It's to destroy the attachment, the distraction, the ownership of stuff. The stuff is there, but why does it have to be yours particularly? What is truly yours is enlightenment. The realization of the whole entire universal drama of potential sparking along moment to moment. Isn't that wondrous? I've survived yet another one of those horrible moments. Isn't that wondrous? I've seen the birth of my child. Isn't that wondrous? I look at all the time machine of the night sky. Isn't that mind-boggling? Right? This is a shift of attention. Attention paid to the miraculous instantiation moment to moment of life, just pouring itself out around you, in you, of you, happening without sinking hooks into the past. Where are you going? Where are you going? Stay here. What? Be in life. Stop taking inventory in your warehouse of ownership. Walk outside, hear the birds and see the trees, smell the flora and fauna. Learn how to speak clearly. I hope that message comes through, even though, we're struggling a little bit with translation here. The message is in there, right? You hear it, you see it. All that remains is for you to remain strong in your practice. As long as you keep chanting, enlightening, invoking your Buddha-ness, it just becomes more and more obvious. It can't be avoided. It can't. So congratulations. You're on the path. I admire you greatly. It can be challenging, yeah. You know this if you practice for any amount of time. But the rewards. And the irony is you can't physically share those rewards. But by achieving those rewards in yourself, you can observe, maybe not right away, but you will observe that your environment is influenced by it. That the rewards are spread throughout your environment, even if they don't realize it, or even if they seem to be working against you. Their karma is being affected. This is something that we need to build confidence in, because that is the samsaric tripwire, which can evolve into doubt, self-doubt, really. Don't let that happen. Have courage. Have commitment. Stay with it. The results are indelible. And for that reason, I say, be kind to yourself. Sometimes things don't seem to be working out, but if you stick with it, you'll see over time they actually did. But you gotta have confidence. And that's the whole reason for this resource, isn't it? It was my motivation from the get-go. Number one, to try to separate the chaff of rhetoric and westernization and just non-Buddhist thinking within the canon of Buddhism. It was driving me crazy. So hopefully I'm achieving that. But that's motivated by a desire for you to feel confident, for me to feel confident about practicing correctly. And certainly Nichiren's life is an example of that very effort, yeah? At least we don't have to deal with Mongol hordes, little or great. All right, I will let you go with those thoughts. Thank you so much for participating. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really is the bodhisattva effort of our Sangha to make this resource more available to more people, help people out whom we don't even know. We have members of this Sangha, or subscribers, if you will, worldwide. It might be interesting to make a map one day of all these different, but that's a physical thing. We're all one. We're all attaining Buddha-ness through our own little physical portal of life. Yeah? So thank you. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you for your Buddha-ness, your support. Patrons, a whole nother level of support. I don't even know how, other than to keep this going, I don't know how else I can honor your support. So tell me if I'm doing a good job or if I'm missing the mark, right? In the meantime, take care of your health, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay? Bye for now. Myo renge kyo.